You're listening to the Belgian Grand Prix podcast on Formula1 FanCast. To keep up to date with the latest Formula 1 news, visit www.formula1fancast.com, and you can also follow us on Twitter at Formula1 FanCast. Well, Formula 1 is back after its summer break, and so is Formula 1 FanCast. Hope you all had a decent break. The second half of the season kicked off at the magnificent Spa-Francorchamps track, and Sebastian Vettel once again took the checkered flag to take another race victory in 2011, and seemingly on his way to his second driver's title. Mark Webber made it a Red Bull 1-2 as the Australian came home in second, and Jenson Button put in a fine performance to finish the race third. Plenty to get our teeth into, and I'm pleased to have been joined by Formula 1 pundit Will Vincent. Enjoy your break?
Yeah, it was alright, I do like the fact they do have a summer break now in Formula 1 because it gives the teams, the drivers, a time to recoup, get it all out of their system, and in some ways as well, a chance to rebuild your season almost.
And it was another weekend of Red Bull domination.
Yeah, I personally think that even though the factories were closed, allegedly, for these 3 weeks, I think that Red Bull really managed to get their game back together, which is one thing they really needed to do. They had a difficult few races before the break, yet they've come back and I wouldn't say they've dominated, but they've been very, very good once again. Another
pole and another race win for Vettel. Can't ask for any better than that, can he?
Precisely. I mean, when I look at qualifying, it reminds me very similar of Nürburgring 1999 when the last driver passed a flag out of those top guys was always going to be the one who gets pole position. And yes, that could be me saying that Vettel was lucky there, but at the same time, the fact that he managed to time the way he was on track so he would be the last guy to cross the line was possibly a great strategic decision for him, because had the McLarens or the Ferraris have got their lap done afterwards, it could have been someone else in pole position.
And despite his huge lead in the driver's standings, you could say Vettel needed that win in Belgium, especially after McLaren and Ferrari won the previous 3 races.
More than the points itself, it was a confidence thing for Vettel winning that race. This is one of the toughest tracks on the calendar, both for the drivers and for the cars, and the fact that the Red Bull managed to hold itself up, the fact that Vettel, managed to keep himself in the right place all the time, he did a very good job there, and yeah, he got 25 points out of it, but he got a lot more than those points out of that race.
Mark Webber made another poor start to the race, but was still able to make his way through the field and finish second. Good result in the end for the Australian, but not for the first time this season. Webber had a terrible getaway.
Yeah, that was a very, very slow getaway, and he was very lucky that a number of drivers didn't run into the back of him there. Especially, speeding up and then going all the way back down to, 35 miles an hour going to La Source. He was very lucky that being in the middle of the pack didn't cause him any issues. And yeah, he did a very good recovery there by the Red Bull driver. I think he's got a little bit of a spring in his step. He's signed a 1-year extension now to stay at Red Bull through 2012. Which I'm guessing him and Horner has had a few words to each other. Probably a bit of a confidence boost for him as well, knowing where he's going to be next year. Now all he needs to really focus on is his driving. The start of the race, I don't know what the issue is, whether it's an issue of the Red Bull getaway system that seems to work so well for Vettel but doesn't work for him, or whether it's just that he's not nailing the starts.
And had Webber not made a poor start, we might well have seen a different race, and he may well have challenged Vettel for the race win.
Yeah, completely. And the thing is, Webber loves these types of tracks. He's very, very good on the type of tracks like Spa, your fast sweeping corners, your technical challenges, where the driver's got to pretty much adapt all the way through a lap to different circumstances. He's very good at that. And had he have made a good start, you would have seen the Red Bulls romping away to victory, and it would have been game over, end of story, a lot earlier than it was.
And with 8 races to go, Red Bull are on course to retain both the drivers' and constructors' titles.
The only way that Red Bull won't win the championship, one or the other, is if they start making the type of mistakes again that they started making in the middle part of the season. And again, as I said, out of all the people, Red Bull was the one who needed that summer break more than anyone else, and it did show. And now you've just got to hope they can maintain that momentum through Monza and then towards the Fire races for the rest of the season.
After a disappointing Saturday and only being able to qualify 13th, Jenson Button scythed his way up the grid to finish third. He pulled off some fantastic overtaking manoeuvres. A great drive from Jenson.
Yeah, and it seems like Jenson's taken some of Lewis's aggression, calmed it down a little bit, and managed to make it work. I mean, that was a great drive for the field. They say P13 was not the position he was looking for, and to be fair, that wasn't necessarily his issue. The McLaren guys called him in thinking that, he's got the lap in the bag, and there are times that sort of thing happens, and when you're in changeable conditions in qualifying like they had at Spa, I think it was the worst call ever to call him in. They could have at least pulled him in, put a new set of tyres on him, sent him back out. It would have been job done. He would have got another lap in, he would have been fine. Or just told him to do another lap, to get another lap in the bag, he would have been fine again. Calling him in was a tragic decision by McLaren, but luckily he managed to fight his way through the field. And again, there wasn't really that much dry running this weekend, so it does kind of fall again into Jenson Button's hands. So, yeah, he did a good race. He really put in a really good performance.
And come the end of the race, Button was not far away from second place man Webber.
He wasn't, and let's not forget as well that he had some damage to his car from his journeys up the field. And yeah, he if there was one guy who could have challenged Webber for second place, it did look like it could have been Button more than anyone else.
Well, joy for one McLaren driver, but frustration for the other as Lewis Hamilton retired from the race after colliding with Sauber's Kamui Kobayashi. Let's cut to the chase. Was Lewis to blame for that incident?
I honestly can't say one way or the other. And yes, he was to blame in one part, but no, he wasn't to blame in others. I think he was a bit stupid to turn in when he thought he would have done, turned left. But at the same time, it's again, Lewis Hamilton, his aggression, again, it kind of needs to be controlled, needs to be tempered a little bit more, so he doesn't make stupid mistakes like that, because he's throwing away the chance of winning a world championship yet again because of it. But if we're on subjects of Hamilton, let's go back to qualifying the day before and talk about Maldonado quickly, because that was a horrible incident right there.
Well, we'll come on to talk about Maldonado and Hamilton's incident in qualifying later on in the podcast. But we saw Niki Lauda after the race saying that Hamilton, had he gone straight rather than moved to the left, he would have still had the position. Would you go along with that?
Niki Lauda, as far as I'm concerned, likes putting his mouth and his foot into situations that I think he doesn't necessarily belong in most of the time. But on this one, I have to say that he's actually slightly correct. I mean, Kobayashi didn't look like he was really going to be turning right anytime soon. So yeah, had Hamilton have kept his lane on the track, per se, perhaps he could have made the corner. I mean, but hindsight is a wonderful thing, and I'm sure that had Hamilton have had 10-second rewind button on his car, he wouldn't have done the same thing.
And it's a shame Lewis had that collision, because it would have been interesting to see where he would have ended up at the end of the race.
Precisely, yeah. It was a good result thrown away by Hamilton. Not only did he lose 25 points in the ground to the Drivers' Championship, I mean, he could have potentially have challenged not only Button for the last spot on the podium, but at least Webber for P2 as well.
Let's talk Ferrari. Fernando Alonso finished the race fourth, with teammate Felipe Massa coming home in eighth. Well, not the strongest of weekends for Ferrari, and the pace for them to challenge Red Bull wasn't there, was it?
It wasn't, no. I mean, this is a weird track for Ferrari. These two tracks, Belgium and Monza, they seem to do really well at one of them and not so well at the other. Whether it's through the luck game, through the speed game, or through something else. They had a solid race, and to be fair, they couldn't have asked really for much more. I mean, P4 for Alonso, looking at circumstances, especially seeing as Hamilton crashed out, was essentially a good result for him. I mean, he had Webber and Button beating him to the line. But at the same time, Ferrari, they've said they're concentrating on next year's car a little bit more. I don't fully believe they're spending all of their resources on that. They still want to, do well, especially come Monza, in front of the Tifosi. So, I don't know what the deal is with Ferrari in a minute. I think they're holding something a little bit further back, trying to disrupt their rivals again, potentially, but the speed wasn't really there this weekend. And
fourth was the best result Alonso could have wished for.
Yeah. I mean, that very well could have been a P5 had Hamilton not have crashed out. So, to get a P4 is, again, a good result for Alonso. He didn't lose as much ground as he could have done, but he could have gained a little bit more ground.
As for Massa, he was able to out-qualify his teammate for the second time, or second consecutive weekend, and just a shame the Brazilian wasn't able to score some strong points.
Well, yeah, I mean, Massa's season, especially in qualifying, looks to be slightly rejuvenated. Again, I could throw down the Nürburgring 99 card here, where had Alonso have, been able to do better on the track, of being behind, Vettel or Massa on the track, you never know. It could have been a completely different situation. But, yeah, it was a good result. For personal motives for Massa, it's good for him as well, because he knows that his teammate's not completely driving all over him, and he has got some form of a chance to do well at some point.
Monza next, and you would expect Ferrari to be right up there with Red Bull and McLaren.
Well, yeah. The Tifosi, as far as Ferrari and Monza go, the Tifosi will either gain them 2 tenths or lose them 2 tenths, depending on how much pressure there is and just how the guys adapt to the track. I think it'll be a good race for Ferrari this time around. I still think they've put more development into Monza than they would have done for Spa, just because they want, a nice result for the home crowd, especially as it's been a difficult season for Ferrari. It seems to be when they've had difficult seasons, a difficult part of the seasons, they manage to pull it back together for Italy. But when they're doing well in the season, it seems to be they do slightly worse. So, yeah. I hope they do well. I mean, it's like a British driver being at Silverstone, multiply it by about 100, and then you get what Ferrari have to deal with at Italy. So there's a lot of pressure there, but I think they'll deliver.
Coming on to Mercedes now, and all eyes were on Michael Schumacher as the 7 times world champion celebrated his 20th anniversary in Formula 1. He started the race from the back of the grid after a disastrous Saturday, but Michael put in a stunning drive to finish 5th, and he also got past his teammate Nico Rosberg with 2 laps to go. An outstanding performance from Schumacher, and no doubt he will have been a contender for driver of the day.
Yeah, Schumacher would have finished 5th regardless of where he started. I don't think he would have had the raw pace to really challenge much further up on the grid. But saying that, I think that the fact he did start from the back, and it is his 20th anniversary, and let's not remember his first race didn't go very well in Formula 1 when he retired from P7 on the grid about 100 yards into the race. So I think that Schumacher starting from the back was actually a blessing in disguise for him. Gave him that little bit more of a drive to do well, compound some of his critics a little bit, and show the real Michael Schumacher again. The mistake in qualifying was disastrous. I have no idea how that could have happened, how the wheel could not have been attached properly, and it was such a shame as well, because this is always a track where Schumacher is always able to pull something magical out of the bag. But saying that, some of his best drives at Spa in his Formula 1 career have come from when he started back in the pack. I remember, I think it was 95, he started from P15 and did really well.
And Michael's performance in Belgium, you have to say, is something pretty special, and it certainly brought back memories of his final race for Ferrari in Brazil 2006.
Yeah, and what you saw at that race was Michael Schumacher, once again, at his very, very best. To be honest, Nico had a big wake-up call that race. I mean, this was not only Schumacher outperforming him, but from where he came from the back of the pack to, be able to take the position, that was a dominant performance by Schumacher over his teammate. And if Nico didn't sit up and take notice, then something bad's happened with him.
Well, we saw Nico finish the race behind his more experienced teammate in 6th place, and we saw both Mercedes drivers making flying starts to the race, and at one stage Rosberg was leading the race after getting past Vettel on the opening lap. But it's just frustrating that Mercedes haven't got the race pace to be right up there against Red Bull, McLaren and Ferrari on a regular basis.
Yeah, I think it was Renault that had exactly the same thing a few years back. Alonso seems to be able to bolt from wherever he was in the grid and be somewhere good at the start of the race. But you're right, it's like it was really nice to see Rosberg lead that race. And again, had Schumacher have qualified well, it could have been Schumacher leading, at Belgium on his 20th anniversary race, and that would have been a wonderful sight to see. Rosberg made a very, very good start to the race there. I mean, taking the lead, that was tremendous. But it was always going to be, let's wait until the DRS kicks in, wait a few laps, and Red Bull was going to be passed. And then from there, it was going to be, let's see how far you can drop back. It's a shame that Mercedes haven't got the pace, because they have got two very good drivers. I mean, Nico Rosberg, let's be honest, he didn't have the best time at Williams. And he's one of those unlucky guys that he's not really had a race-winning car ever in his career. I compare him very often to Jenson Button. For the first part of his career, he didn't have the machinery designed to win. But hopefully, if Rosberg sticks at Mercedes for long enough, the team will eventually be able to produce a car that's good for him. And you never know, one day I still think you'll see him in a Red Bull or in a McLaren.
But nonetheless, Mercedes had a decent race.
They had a decent race, best of the rest, by a nice margin as well. They are showing signs of improvement, which is nice. They've obviously established themselves as, the best of the midfield for now. But it's a case of, is this good performance coming at a trade-off for next year? Are they going to be on the back foot again come 2012? Or are they just finally starting to realise where the mistakes are in their car and finding ways to rectify them?
One team who had a disappointing Saturday were Force India. Paul Di Resta went out in Q1 in qualifying and could only manage 18th. Adrian Sutil had a big accident in Q2 and ended up 15th. But come Sunday, Sutil finished in the points to finish the race 7th and pick up 6 crucial points. And Di Resta agonisingly missed out on the points, finishing the race 11th. Will, a good result for Force India considering they had a miserable Saturday.
Yeah, and I remember there was a few years ago, well, back when they started introducing points down to 8, it always used to be that the driver that finished 7th would finish 9th. And then now they've introduced the points, it always seems to be that one driver who finishes 11th all the time, who doesn't deserve for their reward. And Paul Di Resta, unfortunately, is in that position at the minute. I mean, he deserves more points. I mean, he's done some fantastic drives this season. But Adrian Sutil, let's not forget, I mean, he's had some amazing performances at this track. It's a track that not only do Force India traditionally do well at, it's a track that Sutil's traditionally done well at as well. And for Sutil to score points, I almost expected him to do that well. And in some ways, I almost expected him to do slightly better, but the Mercedes were on top form as well. So, considering the circumstances, a very good point tool for Force India. And it's just such a shame that Di Resta didn't do a little bit better.
And for Paul, unfortunately, his bad luck continued.
Yeah. I mean, that's the part and parcel of being a rookie driver. You can't always have luck your own way, and for him, character development-wise, it's very good what he's had this season. He's had some amazing drives. He's had some really good luck at times, but he's also had some bad luck at times to remind him that, it's not always going to be as good as he's had it. So, I mean, I expect him to still do really big things, and the fact that he's taken it all with a pinch of salt, just moving on to the next race, and still putting in really good performances, shows how well developed a driver he is.
Well, Sutil's result in Belgium meant Force India are only 3 points behind Sauber now, but do you think it's possible for Force India to beat Renault?
It depends on how well Renault do for the rest of the season. It seemed to be this weekend that ever since Bruno Senna's got on that car, all of the frowns have turned into smiles at Renault. I mean, let's not forget that the Renault car was never really designed for Heidfeld or Petrov. It was designed for one man and one man only, that was Kubica. So they've spent much of the season having to redevelop a car for their number one driver, and now they're really having to slightly redevelop it again. I think Renault's ultimate aim this season is to keep Force India behind them, and I think that unless they have a lot of bad luck, they'll probably end up doing it.
Well, talking of Renault, Vitaly Petrov finished the race 9th, but the big news surrounding the team was Bruno Senna announced as replacing Nick Heidfeld for the Belgian and Italian Grand Prix, and Senna may well even take Heidfeld's seat for the remainder of the season. Will, your thoughts on the driver situation at Renault?
More than anything else, I think the nicest thing to see was the Senna name back in a gold and black car. It was a magical sight to see. I mean, let's not forget that Ayrton had some of his greatest races ever driving a JPS livery car. And yet, there's no tobacco sponsors nowadays, but the car looks the same. Heidfeld, I like Heidfeld as a driver, but he's been in Formula 1 now for so long, and he's not really been able to deliver the results. And I think, it is almost time for him to hang up his racing gloves, have a shave, and, just go and live the rest of his life. But for Senna, this is the opportunity he's been waiting for, and he deserves as well. I mean, let's not forget last year he was in possibly the worst car in Formula 1, and he struggled week in, week out, trying to get results out of that car and couldn't do anything with it. Now he's in a Renault. I expect him to start delivering races. Let's not forget that he's got the entirety of Brazil expecting him to do well in races, and having him in a car like Renault does wonderful things for that team. It almost makes him Brazil's number one driver, because Felipe Massa, I think the entirety of Brazil know he's always going to be Ferrari number 2, so he's never really going to challenge for a championship. So this is a great opportunity for Senna, great opportunity for Renault, and hopefully it might help Petrov do some good results as well.
And how would you assess Bruno's weekend in Belgium?
Couldn't have asked for anything better from him, simply put. I mean, he had a solid qualifying, a solid race. I mean, first weekend in the car as well. Could you really ask so much more from him? Let's be honest.
Williams' Pastor Maldonado had an eventful weekend. We saw in Q2 on Saturday Lewis Hamilton get past the Venezuelan on the final corner whilst the Brit was on a hot lap. But at the end of the session we saw Maldonado appearing to deliberately drive into Hamilton's car. Maldonado was then demoted to 21st wheel. What Pastor did was totally unnecessary and unacceptable.
Yeah, and let's put it straight. I watch NASCAR and I watch IndyCar a lot. And even in NASCAR, where drivers vent their frustrations a lot more than they do in this sport, you do not see anything that blatant at that speed to try and cause a wreck. Had that incident have happened, 200 metres down the road, or had Maldonado tried turning into him a little bit more, we could have seen Hamilton in hospital at the very least. We could have seen a humongous accident, and that was possibly the worst thing I've seen in Formula 1 for a very long time. Immediately, people started comparing it to Michael Schumacher and Rubens Barrichello at Hungary last year. I mean, but the thing is, that was a racing incident. This was just pure driver retaliation. It deserves no place in Formula 1. It deserves no place in motorsport. And I still think he should not have been allowed to compete in the race. That was that severe. I think Frank Williams would have had a very serious talking to him, and I wouldn't be surprised if Charlie Whiting and the rest of Race Control had a very, very serious word of him also. And if he ever does anything like that again, I think his backside will be out of Formula 1 faster than he can say his name, because he'll just get his super license revoked and he'll be gone.
But we must also say congratulations to Maldonado for scoring his first ever points in Formula 1 after starting the race 21st and finishing 10th. And that could be the result that kickstarts his season, because this year it's been a real struggle for Williams, hasn't it?
It has been. But again, I still think that as far as a lot of people are concerned in that Williams paddock, he was very, very lucky to get away with what he did. So whether or not that gave him the determination to go out and do something good for the team after what he did on Saturday, I don't know. Maybe that incident could have been the kick up the backside he needed. And scoring his first points, it's always a bit of a relief for a driver. It's always score your first points, then score your first win, and then try and string in number wins together to get a championship. Now he's done that first step, perhaps he'll be able to get more points, I don't know. But I still think he's being outperformed in that Williams.
And well done to both Lotus drivers, Jarno Trulli and Heikki Kovalainen, for finishing ahead of Rubens Barrichello. Kovalainen made it into Q2 again, and Lotus are certainly making forward strides race by race, aren't they?
Well, yeah, and I think out of all of the teams at the back, Lotus, the links that Lotus have will help them the more they race. I mean, I still got a number of concerns about Hispania, I've still got a number of concerns about Virgin Racing, but Lotus, because of the way they work, I mean, you've seen the Lotus name pretty much all over the place now. You've seen them in IndyCar, you see them, in Le Mans Series, so on and so forth. The name itself is probably helping morale in that team, and I don't know what technical partnerships they have elsewhere, but I've got a feeling they're developing and they're growing stronger. And I wouldn't be surprised if you start seeing two names of Lotus in the points at some point soon.
And also many congratulations to Jerome D'Ambrosio, who was able to finish his home race. Jerome has done a good solid job for Marussia Virgin this season, hasn't he?
He's done a good job, yeah. In a car that, to be honest, is horrible, and in their second season in Formula 1, I would have expected Virgin to have done slightly better. But D'Ambrosio's done a very good job in that car. His consistency and his performances are what will get other teams to recognise him. The fact that, he's not crashing off the racetrack every 4 laps or anything, and the fact that he can put in good performances in a car that is so underpowered and so behind the pace.
But let's be honest, he'll probably be remembered for his handbrake turn in the pit lane in the Hungarian Grand Prix this year.
Yeah, and that was something, it's something funny, but at the same time, he's still a rookie and mistakes still happen. Let's think back to Jenson Button. I mean, he made one of the stupidest mistakes I've ever seen in Formula 1 pack at Monza in 2000 when he crashed under the safety car. So these rookies' mistakes, they do happen, but it's always about how you bounce back from them.
And finally, the Italian Grand Prix next, and a Grand Prix in which McLaren and Ferrari need to beat Red Bull.
Yeah, I mean, this track is going to be high speed, high drama. Depending where the DRS is, there's potential to be a lot of overtaking. It's going to be a great Grand Prix. I think that not only do Ferrari and McLaren have a very good chance of beating the Red Bulls here, I think that Mercedes, with their straight line speed, which is sometimes talked about but not often remembered, Mercedes have got a good chance at this race. And let's not also forget, Renault might have a good chance, Force India might have a good chance. They always do pretty well at low downforce circuit. It's going to be a very interesting Q2 session more than anything else this weekend, and I expect at least one big name to be bolted out of Q2.
Will, thank you very much for reviewing the Belgian Grand Prix with me. If you want to have your say on the Grand Prix, then you can send a tweet either to @Formula1 FanCast or @Baggies20. And to keep up to date with the latest Formula 1 news, visit www.formula1fancast.com. From me and Will, adios.